we've got 19 people online, and we've got some people in the room in London. I'm desperately sorry I can't make it down to London today. Well, I'm sorry in one way. I'd like to be there, but it's roasting hot. I can't imagine what the tube was like in London getting across from Euston this evening. So well done to everyone who's made it in the heat. Let me just, the plan for this evening is I'm going to run through just a couple of slides to introduce the session and BCS and the ISSG. And then I'm going to hand over to the guys in the room. Rob Wilson, one of the committee members from ISSG, has arranged this talk this evening. So he's going to introduce the talk and introduce our speaker tonight, Paul Spruce. So very quickly from me then, I'm Steve Sands, I'm chair of the ISSG. Little bit of housekeeping just before we get cracking, please. I'm just admitting people as we go along here. So first of all, we're on Zoom. It's pretty much impossible for us to know who's on the call or to police it in any meaningful way. So we're not enforcing the Chatham House rule. Indeed, we're recording the entire event. So those of you who either want to watch it again, because it's going to be so good, or if there's someone who wasn't able to make it this evening who thought that they would, then the event will be recorded and posted to our website within the next week or so. Chat is going to be open on Zoom for any questions, so please post those questions as we go along. Paul and Rob can let us know what their preferred approach to dealing with questions is, whether they want to deal with them there and then, or whether they want to hold them off to the end. I suspect it will be the latter, but I'll let Rob and Paul deal with that when we get to it. So, all of those on Zoom, please post your questions as we go along. Very quick intro to BCS for those of you who may not be members. So BCS are the Chartered Institute of IT. We've got 75, I think, thousand odd members, mainly here in the UK, but we have some members abroad as well, across around about 155 countries, I'm told. The most important bit for me is here in the UK, of course. We've got about 50 branches up and down the UK. So when you join the BCS, you will automatically be associated with your local branch. And then on top of that, we've got around about 50 special interest groups, of which the ISSG, the Information Security Specialist Group, is one. Additionally, we've got about 11 international sections and 40 student chapters. So if you're not a member of the BCS and you're considering it, then please do have a look at the website or get in touch with myself or any of the committee members who are in the room this evening. I think there's a few. Have a chat with them and we'll help you to get your membership sorted out. We are a very broad church. We talk about all aspects of IT. So not just information security, cyber security and privacy, which is kind of the ballpark areas that the ISSG deals with, but we cover all areas of IT. So that's that bit. What else have we got here? A little bit more on the ISSG. We've been around for just over 40 years now. We had a kind of birthday party celebration thing a year or so ago, which was great fun. We're one of the oldest specialist groups, and we're certainly the largest specialist group with just short of 3,000 members at the moment. Obviously, always looking to increase that if we can, but the way to increase that, I think, is to keep on putting on events like this tonight, things that are interesting and entertaining that people want to know about. So our remit, as you can see there, information, cybersecurity, cloud security, and privacy. And with all of the stuff that's been hitting the news, I've been away up in Scotland this week, but I haven't been able to avoid the fact that some of our major retailers have been suffering somewhat this week. In fact, I went into the Co-op store in Ballach in Loch Lomond on Wednesday last week, and they virtually didn't have any fresh food whatsoever. So I think we understand what's gone on there and what's allowed people into their network. We can see the impact that that has had on the Co-op. Slightly different impact, but equally serious for Marks and Spencer's. So if ever we needed a reminder that information and cybersecurity is important, this week is a great time to take that learning. So our current themes on the ISSG, we're talking about cloud, we're talking about quantum, in particular post-quantum cryptography, we're talking about third-party risk, we're talking about AI, cyber-related AI, AI related to cyber, whichever way around you want. And anything really to do with legal and regulatory around information, cybersecurity and privacy, and of course, information security standards. So those are our current themes for this year. We review those every year and we take feedback from all of our members so that we can work out a program of events that will be of interest. So I think that's pretty much me for this evening. At this point, I'm going to stop sharing and hand the floor back to Rob Wilson, who in turn, I think, will hand the floor over to Paul Spruce. Thanks very much indeed.
Steve. Well, welcome again. Today we've got to talk on threat modelling from Paul Spruce, who is a cybersecurity consultant at BT. He's been in the Secure by Design team over the last 4 to 5 years. And hand over to Paul, and he can give you a talk on, and we'll take questions at the end. That's okay.
Evening, welcome. Welcome everyone that's online. So a little bit about myself. I've worked in the telco industry for about 2 decades or so, predominantly in telco infrastructure, military and public sector. Technical engineering background, again from around that infrastructure, and I continually sort of promote secure by design and threat modeling methodologies internally and externally of where I work, which is in BT. Outside work, I live in Ururi National Park, formerly known as Snowdonia. I'm a proud military veteran. I'm an average okay-ish ultra runner. I'm a host of a podcast, which I run with my brother, where we talk to military veterans about going into business. But that's not what we're here today. Agenda, we're going to have a high-level overview of the what, why, how, and who of threat modeling in general. And then we're going to have a high overview, walk-through, talk-through of the edged core approach and methodology. So that by the end, you'll have a general understanding of threat modeling if you've not heard of threat modeling before. And you'll also have a basic understanding of the edge to core approach and methodology. And the reason I say basic is because it's a new approach that you're going to be shown today, and you may not get it straight away. So repetition, repetition, repetition with everything that you do, okay? Your threat model, right? So just by show of hands of people in the room, I can't see the people online, unfortunately, who has heard of threat modeling before, knows what it is, has performed a threat model, or anything like that?
Which one do you want?
Yeah. Okay, so who has heard of threat modeling before? Good. Okay. Who has ever performed a threat model? Okay, and that's fine. So what that means is we've got a varying selection of people that know the subject and people that don't know the subject. That's great. So for some of you, this may be an absolute brain dump of, oh my days, this is brand new information. How am I going to take it all in? That's cool. That's fine. All right. For others, it's going to be a review of some of the information you already know. Right. So what is a threat model? So in its simplistic term, it is a process to highlight threats against a thing, right? And then what I mean by a thing in this instance, it could be a solution, a device, infrastructure, computer, whatever, right? But we'll call it a thing in this instance. Highlight threats against that, or things that can cause it harm. We then also look at things that can stop or prevent those things from causing harm. So you have your threat and you have a control, marry them together, very much a threat model, right? It varies in how it's performed, and we'll go to that in a second. Why do we need it? So, apart from the obvious, it kind of makes sense to look at things that you want to look at, highlight the threats, and then put some stuff on stuff to stop those threats from happening. Kind of think of it like insurance. So we've all had life insurance, or life insurance, car insurance, holiday insurance, all right? And it's not because we want our car to break down, or we want to lose our holiday, or we want our house to fall down. We get this so we know that we have the best chance of, if those stuff were happening, if that stuff was to happen, right, we've got the best things in place. So threat modeling in general is kind of like an insurance policy against your digital assets. You put in the stuff, or you're putting stuff in place before anything was to happen. How do you threat model? Here's the question. So there are multiple frameworks out there. You can search them, but there are millennia of frameworks out there. I'm going to show you one today. Great. But they all have three commonalities. Right? They all circle around 3 points. Understand what you're looking at, right? Or highlight what you actually want to look and protect. Identify what can cause it harm, and then provide the mitigations or controls or sticking plasters, however you want to call it, to stop those or prevent those threats from happening. Now, a threat model can be complex in nature. It can take a long time, or it can take a very short time. It can be conversational. You sit down, okay, we've got this new product. What are the threats to it? And it could be on a post-it note on a board, and you talk and walk and talk through it. Or it could be at the other end of the scale, where you have all different stakeholders in a room and you're tearing it apart. All right. And you're going, this is the actual threat, and this is how you do it. And it's big complex diagrams. So it varies on exactly how you perform threat modeling. And there are different methodologies and frameworks out there that enable you to do this. So who does the threat model? So you can do it by your own if you want, but ultimately threat modeling, the process itself, is a team sport. All right. Yeah, the right people in the right room, the right stakeholders in the room to perform the threat model. And these could be from a wide-ranging part of your business. So it's not just security, it's not just architecture. You can have people from legal in there, people from HR in there. It all depends on what you're trying to threat model. The more eyes you get on it, the different aspects and different lenses you get on it, which allows you to look at the fuller picture from different angles. So, which moves me on to threat modeling edge to core. So what is it? Okay, so it's a structured method, all right, of knowing where to start your threat model and knowing where to finish. It uses a concept called attack boundaries, which I will go into, and it also highlights the use of your operational data to enable to give you an objective output at the end of the threat model. Prerequisites. For this framework, or this approach and methodology, have a good level of an understanding of the concepts of security, so know what we mean by security and how to secure things and threats. All right, we know that a threat is going to cause us harm. We know a control can put something in place to prevent that happening. Understand what a control is. Just explained it. A control is something that you're going to put in place, or a mitigation you're going to put in place to stop that from happening. Understand the MITRE attack framework is, or what it is. Now, framework that we're going to look at today is interchangeable with other methodologies, but today we're going to specifically look at it from a MITRE attack angle, okay? And then understand what a TTP is, a tool, technique is, and how it works. Why? Why edge to core? So there are many methods out there, right? And how do you know which one to choose as a business? Now, this methodology is aimed at large to complex solutions because it needs to go into the granularity of detail to be able to use your operational data to actually go, this is a credible threat. It allows you to systematically break down a model into smaller pieces through the use of concept of an attack boundary. And it allows you to utilize your data to give that objective output. Stages of the how. There are 5 stages. All right, and we're going to go into these in a little bit more detail now. So the first one is understand and identify the scope of your model. Okay, so this is where you want to understand exactly what your model exactly what you're modeling and how far left and how far right you want to go. You don't want to end up down the rabbit hole having tea with a Mad Hatter, okay? And it can happen because you can go and go and go. So you need to define a scope and what you want. Next thing is diagram, right? And map out the attack boundaries. Then identify the threats. Then review your operational data and then look at mitigations and your next steps. So what does that look like then? The first thing you need to do is identify and understand. So what are you actually looking at? What do you need to threat model? Is it a server? Is it an environment itself? Or is it an application? Where does that actually sit? Right? What does it talk to? Where does it sit in the grand scheme of things? Is it just an application in isolation? Or is it a brand new platform that you're standing up and integrating into an old legacy platform? These are the type of questions you need to kind of ask at this point. You're starting to build that story of what you want to threat model. You also need to think about the controls at this point. What protections are we going to put in place or that we have in place already? All right, and we start building that out. Once we understand what we're going to do, we diagram. Now, a diagram can be provided for you, which one will be shown tonight. Not doing people's artwork, I will admit, right off. All right, but it shows. Diagram it out. It gives you a visual representation of what you're looking at. It's great to see where everything sits, where everything connects together. Or you can draw one yourself. All right. This is about, again, me going back to getting the right people in the right room. Getting the people that understand the technology, understand the infrastructure, understand the environment of what you're threat modeling in the room. Don't try and do it with limited or no information of that, okay? Because it'll stall the threat modeling process. Here's the diagram we're going to use tonight. Like I said, extremely complex in nature. All right, we have an internal and an external environment. We have a third party speaking to a couple of systems, and we have a flow of to and fro into and outside of the infrastructure. I mentioned an attack boundary before, but what is it? So just by show of hands in the room, who's heard of a trust boundary before? Not. Okay. So a trust boundary is a conceptual line within a threat model, which shows us the change of trust between a process or data, right? Whether that is the classification going up or whether that is a security put in place around the thing. That's great, but it can get quite hectic in a larger model. So, concept of an attack boundary. Well, someone's at the door. An attack boundary is a likely place within a solution where an attack will happen. And there are 5. And I'll show you on that extremely good diagram where they are now. The first one is any external connectivity into that environment. All right? So what I mean by external connectivity, this is internet and any non-managed business environment. So if you don't manage it, okay, and it's a third party, it comes into that environment, that's where it is. That's the first attack boundary, right? It's the edge. Second one is the systems that sit within the environment itself. And these are the ones that can be exploited as well. At this point, the adversary or attacker is already into your system, all right, and they can exploit the systems themselves. Third one is any internal connectivity between that environment. So any internal system connectivity. There's a chance of an attack there. 4, now this one's missed a lot of times, which is an internal connectivity externally out, right? So we have all the rules coming in, firewall rules stopping people coming in. We don't sometimes afford that luxury going out. Now, when an attacker comes in, the first thing they want to do is want to get in and get out quite quickly. If they have the ability to sit on your environment and just push data out, command and control, just exfil data as they can, why we need to look at this specifically, right? This also is inter-domain as well. So if you have a managed service and you want to go from internal, external, so domain 1 to domain 2, 2 to domain 3, This is what you'd look at as well. And then 5, which is the overall management of that internal infrastructure. This is where we're looking at, okay, do we have the right vulnerability management controls in place? Do we have a denial of service control in place? Do we have access controls in place? That kind of stuff, right? However, looking at the boundaries, you can have multiple attack boundaries, all right? So multiple, in this case, number ones. So in this solution or scenario here, we have multiple external connections into the environment, okay? It's also worth noting here that an attack boundary, those 5 attack boundaries, may not always be present in what we're modeling. For example, that system there could be completely air-gapped to the internet or any external connectivity, right? The only way you can get onto it is physically going there and working on the machine, right? So an external connectivity from the internet at that point, that boundary doesn't exist. Okay. So this is why building the model, understanding what you're building, diagram it, and then mapping out where those attack boundaries sit is prevalent to start. So now understand what we're looking at. Now I've got a really awesome diagram. We have the attack boundaries where we can look at where potential attacks can happen. So we're now going to identifying and analysing threats. So how do we do this? And where do we actually start? So I don't know if you can see that, but that says start at the edge, all right? So we start from the outer edge of your solution and move way in. And we look at each of the attack boundaries in their own right. So we look at all the 1s that are prevalent, all the 2s, all the 3s, all the 4s, and then the 5. Okay? This ensures that we don't miss anything. And the reason this is because you could look at a solution, find a massive hole here. Oh my days, we have a database with all our customer credentials on that is got no access controls on it. CEO and everyone's like is absolutely jumping up and down, pants on fire and all this lot. All right. But what you've missed by going straight there is that you have an edge device sitting at the outside, right? That has legacy software on there that's not been patched in 2 years. Right? And no one looks at it because it's gathering dust in the corner. So that's why we start from there. You're going to get to this. All right. It's big and scary, yes. But you have your lines of defense already in place. For them to get to that point, they're already on your system, right? You're already compromised. Start from the outer edge, work your way in, looking at each of the attack boundaries. So I'll show you what it looks like in a second, but basically you've worked through all the 1s, all the 2s, all the 3s, all the 4s. At this point, when you identify your threats, you can use another framework. Right? You can input another methodology at this point to highlight any threats. So if your company or business uses another methodology, all right, they can use it here to identify those threats. Right? And then you still work the approach through, that's why it's approach and a methodology. You still work the approach from one end, going through the attack boundaries, going right. Let's ask all the questions here, or let's do our model here using this framework. We'll still highlight the threats, we're still working through. Okay? You're getting full coverage from end to end. But today, we're going to work through a hybrid approach using part of the MITRE attack framework. Right? So, like it says there, little green arrow, you start there and you work from the outer edge in and you finish at the end. Okay? So, you've now started from the outer edge, you're in attack boundary 1. Okay? This is a hybrid approach. So you ask questions, all right? And then we also utilize the MITRE attack framework. And the questions you ask are, does the control, right? So in the attack boundary itself, does the controls in place prevent, and I'll show you the list of questions now. And what you're trying to ascertain here is the control that you have in place or propose to put in place effective? Just because there's a control in place doesn't mean it's effective. So, does the control prevent you from gaining access? Yes, no, okay. Does it prevent you from viewing any information? Does it prevent you from actually moving around? Does it prevent you from changing anything? Going in, messing about, come back out? Does it prevent you from actually stopping it working? And you switch it off and on? And you send it multiple requests so it just dies? Does it prevent your actions going unnoticed? Does it prevent being accessed by a third party? I'm not saying that third parties can't access it. What I'm saying is, if you don't have any third party access and people can come in and out, that's not happening. And the reason we do this is to validate the controls that are in place. Okay, to understand the controls that you have in place. Like I said before, just because you've got a control doesn't mean it's effective. So what I mean by that is you could have an identity and access management control. Just because you've got control in place doesn't mean it's effective. So you could have an access control on system A, where me and Rob, the only people in the whole business have access to it. It's a good access control, right? None of you lot, people online, you can't access it, only me and Rob can. It's a good access control, right? You probably agree. But we're using a shared account, right? So we both have the same credentials, same password, same username to get into that account, or get into that system. So yes, we have an access control in place, but it's not fit for purpose. So you need to interrogate that and say, actually, what we're going to do is if either one of us gets socially engineered, or either one of us lose our credentials or take a picture of it online, post a note in the corner, that can be manipulated. And that system now has access to someone else. So we then go, okay, that control's not good. Let's improve that by each of us having the right access controls in place. So those questions, this is why getting the right people in the right room, in the right audience, all right, is important whenever you're performing a threat model, right? Test the controls, all right? Are they fit for purpose? Now, if they're not, you have a high-level threat, okay? So I'll go into those questions, the controls, right? The controls that you're looking for, and the high-level threats it then produces. Okay, so ultimately, a lack of a control, high-level control, for instance, a lack of identity and access management, will give you a high-level threat of unauthorized access. Okay, so someone, if you don't have the relevant identity and access controls in place, anyone can walk in. All right, so if you think of it like your houses, right? Everyone in your house has a key to your door. Okay, if you leave your door unlocked, leave it wide open, okay, pointless. All right, so that's why you have a high-level control of access management, your keys. All right, if that's missing or insufficient, it will be a threat on top of that. And it looks like this. You have your question. What prevents you from gaining access? All right, if the control doesn't, you will have a control failure of identity and access management, which will then give you a high-level threat of unauthorized access. Okay. If you control doesn't prevent you, or prevents you, or rather doesn't prevent you from moving around, you have an issue with segregation or network segmentation. all right? Which then gives you a high level threat of lateral movement. So you can move between spaces without being challenged. There are 7 questions that you can go through, all look at really high level control sets that give you a high level threat. So people can read it. So it kind of looks like this. You look at the attack boundaries, you look at you from start to finish, solution going through from end to end, asking those questions, interrogating the controls, and it'll look something like this. So you could say an attack boundary, the control, the availability control isn't there, and we have a high level threat of unavailability to the infrastructure because there's no DDoS protection in place at that point. System 2, it's open to everyone. No access controls in it whatsoever. You have a threat of unauthorized access. And then in between system B and C, you have a high level of viewing or manipulating the data because it's sent in clear. Yes, it's internal, but we should stop getting out of that mindset of just because it's internal, we don't need to encrypt it or send it via secure means, okay? So at that point, okay, you could stop, provide a mitigation, and move on. That's a threat model in effect. You've highlighted threats, you know where they are in the environment, and you provided a mitigation of sorts, right? And then you can move on. However, what we want to do is dig a little bit deeper. So we want to go to the next level down now. So we want to understand, well, how can that threat be acted upon? How can it actually be realized? And we use threats to TTP, tools, techniques, and procedures from the MITRE ATT&CK framework. Okay. So what we've done at BT is we've mapped TTPs to these high-level threats in a nice table, attached it to an attack boundary. Now, if you're familiar with the MITRE ATT&CK framework, it's massive, all right? It's huge. And the list, don't get me wrong, was probably floor to ceiling when we first started. We've then condensed it down to where it sits, how it sits, and where it sits within the environment. It looks something very similar to this. So you have unauthorized access. Bear in mind, this is just a snippet, by the way. There's a lot more TTPs than this, okay? But you can condense it down to what the high-level threat is, where it kind of sits within the environment using the attack boundaries. That allows you to not go through reams and reams of TTPs. All right, it allows you to condense it down and go, okay, on an external point of view, I have 25 TTPs that could be prevalent here, could be usable. That's better than 800. All right. So you now have a list of TTPs looking at a high-level threat. But we need to discount them, okay? Because some of them may be applicable, some of them may be not. So if you're looking at a on-prem solution only, and you have cloud TTPs involved, you get rid of the cloud TTPs because they're not an issue to your threat model, right? If you have no external activity and you have remote TTPs, i.e. people going to do something to allow you to attack that and enable and realize that high-level threat. Just remember that each high-level threats that you find may have multiple TTPs attached to it. Okay. Great thing about the framework, MITRE ATT&CK framework, is that you can click a TTP, tell you exactly what it is and exactly what it does. But if you're unsure, just click it and have a look. You then get to something that looks like this. Okay. What we have now is we've identified a high-level threat. We've now attributed a technique that can realize that threat. Cool. We've gone down to the next level. And it'll look something like this. That there says my TTP. We can't see it on the screen here, but you can see it online. You now have a high-level threat and you have a TTP badge to it. Next step. This is where this is fundamental. This is a really big part of this framework. And in fact, we take it out of this framework, security as a whole. Design security and operational team security. Okay. So who in the room is from a design sort of security background? Anyone? Yep. Who is in the room is from an operational security background? What I mean by that is either red team, blue team, or anything like that. Okay. You guys probably don't talk. Design guys are probably over here. Throw it over the fence. The operational guys pick it up once we've been popped. Right? Okay. So this is paramount that you start building and fostering those relationships now. All right. Start talking to each other, because what operational teams are seeing on the front line can inform how you design securely moving forward. All right. And we do that by reviewing our operational data. Well, what do we mean by operational data? 3 types: threat intelligence, incident data, and threat actors of interest. So this is the information that you can grab from your operational security team if you're in the design space. What does that actually mean, though? So threat intelligence, okay? This could be trends, attacks that are happening generally, right? We all know what's been happening in the news recently with the retails, okay? That's fine. Take it a step down and look at your industry and your sector, whether you're in the finance sector, within the telco sector, or the retail sector. What we're doing here is we're taking it down the next level again. So intelligence specific to your business. Okay. Trends specific to my business. Okay, we've seen that this threat actor here actively targets our business. Okay, some good information there. Past incident data. This is the concrete evidence, right? You could say that threat that you've highlighted, it's happened before. Right? It isn't something you've just made up. We have evidence now to say that this has happened before in an environment, whether that's in industry, whether that's in your sector, or whether that's against your business. So you look at that. And then finally, you look at threat actors of interest. So who's actively targeting your industry, sector, or your business? Okay, so who's actively targeting your business? What techniques do they use? Interlink that with the intelligence, interlink that with your past incident data, and you get objective reasoning, because intelligence is real time and dynamic right now. You know that's happening. You have the intelligence of the threat actors themselves attacking you. Okay, that's real, okay, because you can see it. You have past incident data, so stuff that's happened before in the past, happening. You know, you can draw back on that. So, it gives you real-time dynamic updates. Using the intel, it can show you when a threat landscape changes and how you adapt to that. It enhances your threat prioritization. So if you've ever done a threat model before, when you finish it, you may have a list as long as you're on all these threats. But how do you know which to look at first? Right? This, using the operational data, allows you to prioritize the threat. It doesn't score the threat, okay, but it prioritizes it based upon what you've seen in your model. It allows you to understand the motivations and tactics of an adversary, right? It allows you to work with your operational teams, your threat hunting teams, to go, this is what we found in the model. Will that ring true from a threat hunting side? Yes, it does, or no, it doesn't. Or actually, you've said to put control B in place, but we've seen if you put C, D, and E, all right, that's much more better. That's better. So you go, okay, I've learned now. Next time we see that threat, we now put control B, C, D, and E. And we're designing securely using operational data. Data-driven insights. I've already said it's empirical data. It's pretty much fact, so we can use it, right? And then it creates a continuous feedback mechanism. you're finding stuff in your threat model, right? Within, as it's being built, you're feeding that into operations. Operations are seeing stuff that's happening right now and feeding that back into you. So you're feeding it into them. They're going, actually, if you put A, B, C, and D in place, okay, you're going to make this more inherently secure. Brilliant. Okay. Or you found something in a design and go, we found this system over here. It's a bit like Swiss cheese. There's holes everywhere. Oh, we didn't know that. Okay. We now need to prioritize where we put our resources and our detections. Because we were going to put it on this new shiny sharks with laser on tops of their heads type thing, when we've got a legacy equipment in the corner that's gathering dust that has, you know, a backdoor that can basically infiltrate our system. We need to have a look there. We then come to mitigations. Well, this is where we look at the controls, look at the threats, and then provide mitigation. Now, from a TTP perspective, from a MITRE perspective, when you interrogate the TTP, it shows a very, very high level of mitigation, what you can put in place. So if it's an access technique, it will have very, very high level of input access control methods, right? But controls and mitigations are bespoke in nature, and very context specific to what you're modeling. Because system A in business A, system A in business B, but it's the same system, right? It's how that's set up. So you may need to look at it from a wider perspective and go, actually, we need to put a bit more in place here. And then sort of think of, well, if that control fails, you know, touch wood, it doesn't. What's the next thing we need to do? Is there a second line of defense that we can put in place? Is there another additional control that we can put in place? Right. I'll think about that. And it will look something like this. Okay, you have your high level threats, you have your TTPs, and you have mitigations. Well, the mitigations have obviously been enhanced somewhat because you now have the technique. We've gathered intel. We've gathered our past incident data. Okay, and we've gathered who's attacking us and why they want to cause us harm and what techniques they use. And we've cross-referenced that against the threats that we found. We need to prioritize that. So how do we do that? So, really simple list. Okay. People in the room, you can't see, but I'll explain now. So, left-hand column says how many times, how many threat actors in your list that are attacking you use that specific technique. The next one is how many times has that technique been realized before against your business? And it gives you a priority score. So if you have, say you have a top 10 list or a top 5 list, for instance, and one of them's using it and you've never seen it before, okay, it's quite low down on a priority. But if you have seven of them that are using it, actively using it, right? And you've seen it 8 times or more, you know that you've got people actively attacking you and you've seen it before. So it's you need a bit more haste and a bit more urgency to look at it. All I've done is just some arbitrary numbers here just to show you what it kind of looks like, right? So after usage, we know that 7 out of 10 have used this technique. 5 times we've seen it before, 3 and 6, and 0. And what we may seem to think is unauthorized access there. That's the big one. That's that big hole I was saying over here, yeah. But actually, it turns out that the urgent one, based upon our operational data, threats that we've highlighted in the technique, is actually the unavailability of the infrastructure itself, because we know that attackers are utilizing this technique more than anything else. The output of every threat model will have a list of threats that looks very similar to that. Whatever framework you use, whether you use edge to core, whether you use another framework, right? You will have a list of threats. Insert threat library. gather that data, all right, understand where that threat sits and against what system. Now, it has pros and cons, having a threat library. How do you keep it up to date? You know, how's it managed? Threat landscape is so volatile, and techniques are coming out and new actors are coming in with their new ways of kicking in a door, you know, breaking through a window. How do you update that? So there is pros, the fact that you have it all in one space, and the more and more models you do, the more threats that you highlight. You can badge it to systems specifically. And then when it comes to models in the future, you can say, oh, system A, system A, we've done that before. That has these threat models and these threats against it. And these are the mitigations to put in place. Pattern is created, and go from a design perspective. See you later. But how do you manage that, and how do you control new threats coming into place? Is obviously on you as a business or you as an individual. But it's just there that your outputs aren't sitting dusty somewhere, right? Oh, we've done a threat model, that's done. Okay, we'll see in 5 years' time, and we don't revisit it. No. Threat modeling is done from the inception of the idea through to when you turn that thing off, pull out the wall. How does that work? So we do the baseline like we do today in the design. When it goes through development, you should be checking back in on the model. That I'm now doing to that system, does it increase threat? Has it introduced another exploit? It may or may not have. But just check in. When it's in life, a bit more difficult. But you could have a cycle of 6 months or 12 months, depending on the system, to say, you need to check your model. Or you have a threat landscape, massive threat landscape change, new techniques coming in. Think of when COVID came, right? It kind of shifted away from infrastructure and more towards people. We started getting a lot of smishing attempts, right? Because people were at home, people were getting orders delivery online. The techniques had changed. The threat landscape had changed to be both people focused, right? So does that affect your threat model? Incidents happening, okay? You've been popped. I guarantee that in the retail space, people are looking at their own, that have not been hit, and now looking at their own systems, right? Or looking at their threat models, because they're thinking, right, how is this going to play out? Be glad to know the summary. So, what does Edge to Core give you? Initially, it gives you an approach, it gives you a start, and it gives you an end. All right? It allows you to move methodically, breaking up your solution using attack boundaries. It allows you to implement another methodology if you wish to highlight the threat. Edge to Core in its truest form allows you to go into the granularity of detail. It allows you to interrogate your control to make sure you've got the right thing in the right place. And if you haven't, what do you need to do about it? Utilizing, fostering, and collaborating with different teams within security is fundamental in everything that we do moving forward. We as an industry need to become more threat-led. Okay, we need to utilize what we're seeing now, right now, to enable us to design securely for the future. So it enables you to do that. It enables you to use that, foster that collaboration. That, right, thank you for my time. Thank you for your time. Yeah, thank you for your time and for your perseverance in getting here. If you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, still the same face, not the amazing shirt. It's still the same face. So if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, please do.
4 questions online.
Yeah.
What is that?
Good. I have 5 minutes and then I have to run. So questions on the floor first. Yes, sir.
So when you've emphasised the operational side of things, so
Yes.
that particular step, at best it's instant, it's at the moment.
Yeah.
But the incident bit is always historic. It might be yesterday or it
Yeah.
might be months ago and such like. How do you avoid that biasing your modeling to yesterday's threats?
So if you have incident data, it's generally off the back of EIRs, right? You have a report of some sorts, right? You'd need to look at that, and you'd need to look at with your operational teams and say, we got hit yesterday, right? Is that, what mitigations did you put in place at that point? Right, because we've highlighted a threat here of the similar ilk against this system. What controls, or if the incident is still ongoing, what are we doing about it? All right, so there we look at the past data because one, we know it's happened before, and two, we can take learnings from it from a implementation of a control perspective. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but yes, it does. But
Yeah.
just how much you try to avoid looking at yesterday's threats, for example. You have to look at them, but
You have to look at them.
you need to be ready for the next one, and it's really the agility thing I think that you're trying to promote here.
Yes, but it's also using that factual data to say it's happened. Because threat modeling in general is very much very subjective, because what you may think is a threat, I may not think is a threat. So utilizing this data we know is a threat, we can say actually we've come to an agreement, this has happened before, and like I say, it's how far do you go back? You go back 20 years, and that's why the past incident data obviously needs to be, you're not going to go back 20 years on a system that's 20 years, but then where are you at with that system type of thing. Any other questions?
And one of the questions from,
Yeah, I can take one.
Okay.
Apologies for people online. I do need to like bounce in 3 minutes because I need to run.
one of the questions was, any threat model method that can be used for open source software. Actually, the more important one is used for SaaS software. So if you're just looking at a SaaS solution, what threat modeling technique would you recommend using for that?
So, for people in the room that didn't hear that, so it's for a SaaS solution specifically. All right. So it all depends. We start looking at what we want to model. Are we buying a SaaS solution, or are we integrating with a SaaS solution? Now, whenever you're picking a methodology, it solely depends on your business needs. Now, you could use this methodology. Okay, great, happy days. You could use other methodologies out there, well-known methodologies out there, acronym-based methodologies that are out there, right? It all depends on the context of what you want to model. How deep do you want to go into that rabbit hole, right? And your business needs. So I'm fortunate enough, I work for a global company. We have quite a large footprint. But if you're a startup and you're connected, you may not have the same resources, okay? You may not have the time and effort to go through this. So you need to understand which model fits your business objectives to look at what you want to want. Thanks everyone for your time. If you've got extra questions, please ping me on LinkedIn, just DM me, or send a connection request first and then send me a DM, and then I'll be happy to answer all questions. Thank you very much for your time.